So this is my brief tutorial on Artrage for you. I already have this design here. I can show you that I've done it in multiple layers. Unfortunately, you can't name them, I don't think. No, you can't, which is why I don't. Which can get a little confusing, so unless you're like me and chaotic, you might want to choose carefully what each layer is, whether it be your line work, your coloring, your shading, what have you. Obviously, I think you would probably have gotten familiar with layers by now in this program. Obviously, you click the eyeball to make the line or layers disappear or not visible. Obviously, okay, in the toolbar, I don't know if you can see my cursor. You've got your, let's see, your eraser. Obviously, if you go up here into the top left, you see the little cogs. That allows you to change the size, pressure, softness. I've got my pressure at 100%, my softness at 0. That's just my preference. I'm constantly changing the size of the eraser and the brush that I use. It's just muscle memory at this point. I just fall back on it. I don't know if there's a shortcut. If there is, I haven't found it. This little tool underneath the eraser you've probably found out by now, but if you use that as you can use it as a color picker. So you go over whichever part you want and you can click on it, and that will make the color in the palette pop up what you clicked on. I don't really use any of the other brushes. I have dabbled with them. I really liked pencil back when I was using the Adobe Photoshop app on mobile, but I haven't had the greatest luck with this pencil. Maybe I haven't modified it properly. I just like the more graphite look that the other one had, and this one's never really gotten that for me. And the one that I use the most is this one right here between the pencil and the little paint doodad. This one at first seemed like it wouldn't work for my art preferences, but when I discovered that I could easily change not only the size, but also the, where was it? Taper bias. Down at the bottom, you can change how tapered the line is and the taper length too. Ooh, taper length that's good for like stuff like hair and things like that. Just kind of play around with it. I've got my taper bias and length at 0, and I'm just constantly changing the size. So, and my preference, the way I like to draw is I start off with one layer and I just go crazy with like sketching the anatomy of the figure, what have you. Then I'll go into the layer and I will drop the opacity on that, and then I'll go on another layer above it, and that's where I start refining. And if it's a piece that I put a lot of effort into that I want it to look really good, that process will go over like multiple times. I'll just keep on adding layer after layer after layer. I don't have a steady hand. You could probably see with my lines. This is not what I would consider to be a finished piece because of that. So what I would probably do in this, doodad's case is I'd probably go back over him and really like refine the line art, get all these jagged pieces out, whether that be erasing the layer in question to adjust the cleanliness of the lines, or going back over on another layer with a better pen stroke. Oh, and also these little arrows, you probably realize that's your forward and reverse. They come in handy quite a bit. And aside from those 3 tools that I just showed you, that's mostly what I've been using. Now, what I did realize that for the longest time, the paint bucket wasn't working. Paint buckets usually, and you're probably aware of this, would, cover all of the surface area. And it kept on doing that even when I would do what I would consider to be a closed off image. I would try to fill that and it wouldn't fill. I guess that's probably because I wasn't actually completing the image circle or whatever. So if I were trying to do a drawing like this and I just had that tiny little bit, I think you could probably understand where I'm going with this. But you just take, and it's not going to work, it's going to cover everything in the background because that little gap. So what you want to do is you want to make sure before you use the paint bucket tool, which does come in handy now that I know how to use it, that your line work connects. That's pretty much the only thing I would have to say about that. And yeah, So I'm not going to demonstrate this because this is going to be on YouTube, and I don't feel like anybody's seeing anything on my tablet screen. But if I were to jump away from the app, I know I already kind of told you about this, but let's just say I wanted to go check my email. You know, I've got this little area down here. I don't know what you would call that, but these 3 lines at the bottom left. That's where I go to close this window, so to speak, and go to another window. Easy, you know. You just go check your other app. You do it all the time. But if you do it, most likely when you come back, something is going to have gone wrong. It'll look like, oh, my line work layer went missing. And I think I did a pretty good job explaining this on text, but I'm just going to go ahead and say this for anybody that might be watching that doesn't understand. Do not save this. And it will ask you if you want to back out to go to the main menu or the gallery. Because you might freak out and be like, oh, what happened? I don't know. And then that happened to me the first few times. I went back and I was like, oh, I guess I got to go to the gallery. I guess the image got ruined because the layer won't even show up. It'll be gone. It won't even be in your layers panel. It'll be like it'll disappeared, vanished. So you're going to go to your main gallery and it's going to ask you, do you want to save? Yes or no? It's going to feel like a leap of faith, but trust me, every time, do not save it. Don't save it. Just go back to the main gallery and then reselect the image and open it back up. What you'll have found is that it had saved at the last point you saved. It didn't update, it didn't do anything, and it'll bring back that layer. But it's the only way to get that layer back is to go back to the main gallery, click on that file, and ignore the save option. Don't save it, because if you do save it, then it'll have saved as is, missing layer and everything. And I couldn't tell that to somebody enough because I honestly had that happen to me a few times that I could not figure out why it was happening. It took like the 3rd failed attempt after I had drawn a few hours of an illustration, lost all my work, because I don't like to exit things without saving. I'm like, oh, well, I want to save what I've drawn. I had never saved, which is another thing. Save as many times as you can, even if you feel like you're being obsessive with it. It's better to have saved it in like a 5-minute increment than to have waited 10 and then you lost all of your work in that 10-minute period. Constantly saving. I even copy, because you can do that in the main menu. I even copy in the selection options up, and I think it's in the top right. I copy my work sometimes if it's a piece that I care a lot about. And as I was stating before, your options for exporting are great. You got your PNG, which keeps the quality of the image. You can export that right into a Photoshop program and clean up everything you need to. It doesn't lose any of its quality. If you do the JPEG, obviously over time that compresses and it makes things a little bit more pixely. But yeah, PNG comes in handy. It was nice back when I did have the Photoshop app on the Android because I could just take the what is it called, PSD file, and go right into Photoshop with it. So all my layers were there, everything's there. Obviously I don't have my layers like I used to when I do this, but it still is nice to not lose quality when you're trying to touch something up on the desktop. Obviously you've got your palette down here. I think you're well aware of this, but what will easily happen sometimes, and you won't even notice it at first, is that you can accidentally hit the metallic meter, and sometimes it'll like touch it and you don't mean to, and it will make a difference, and you'll start noticing. Let me just show you real quick. So a metallic, of course it's the line that the layer that I'm not selecting, and that's the eraser. So there's your, maybe this one will show it better. That's with metallic at 39%. And you can see the difference, metallic at 0. And you'll be like, why the hell did this thing start looking different all of a sudden? Like the lines that I'm drawing are looking darker or they're looking wonky. And it'll be because you accidentally hit the metallic meter. Let's see. 28% tool size. So that's the other thing you could do. I guess you can click on the number to change the size in increments. But I've gotten pretty good at sliding with the stylus. Oh, right. Okay, let me change the layout of this real quick so I can access that. All right, so up here in this little pinned icon, there's 2 things that I didn't know when I first started that I wish that I had. You click on it, you have 2 options here, and I've preloaded these, by the way. all you have to do to upload them is just click on the plus sign, and I think there's a plus sign on this as well. You pull it from your gallery, from your phone's gallery, or your tablet rather, and you've got your tracing option. I've turned that off, visibility, but if you were to click it, it's a dropped opacity, and you can change the opacity, which is really nice. So you could draw over that, trace that, you know. Great. All right, I'll go ahead and hide that. In references, if you select that, you'll have a pinned image that you can change the size and the angle. And I use references always. I swear by references. Anybody that scoffs at references is a piece of shit, in my opinion. So basically, references are a big deal for me, and I'm constantly just having multiple references on my screen at one time, just like that I can reference. What's really cool about it, though, is if you take the little eyedropper tool and you go to the reference images, it actually lets you select colors from that image. Really handy. The thing that I really didn't figure out until a few months ago was that, I'm going to go ahead and hide that, tracing images aren't just tracing images. What you can do with a tracing image is go into the little options panel underneath the eyeball, and what you can do is called convert to paint. And converting it to paint, you have to make sure that you know which layer you have active when you do this. Right now it's on my line art, which I don't really care about right now. I'm just doing this for showing you purposes. I have sent it to the last layer I had active, which was my line art, and now I can interact with this as if I had drawn it myself. So I can erase, I can manipulate it, and that's how I, to this day, still make memes. So if I'm going to be photoshopping something on my tablet and I want to insert a character into an environment that they're not normally in, I would come in here and I would erase around the image. So in this case, I'd be erasing around this bell. And then I would take that image on that layer and then I would insert it on another one, having done the exact same thing for the background. I would go to the tracing part, go to convert to paint. Keep in mind which layer you have active and you'd send it over there. So to get started, these are the notes that I've got. I'm going to go ahead and back out so I can undo all of the damage I just did. Send it back to when it was just line art and it wasn't shared with that. And then I can go ahead and hide that, and there you go. Hopefully it didn't go too quickly. If you need to go back, obviously I didn't want to make this last forever, but I might make another video a little bit later with some maybe more advanced steps, and if I catch anything that I don't know already, which I'm sure there is a ton, I'll go ahead and share these as well. Hopefully anybody that has never used Artrage or has just gotten started with it, if you found this video, I hope this could be helpful for you. I personally love Artrage. I'm not a huge Adobe fan, even though I have to I have to pay for Adobe. I always like to support the outsiders that have made their product more accessible to the masses, because art should be for everybody and not some big conglomerate monster that takes over the world. That's enough of my rant. All right, I'll see you guys later.